So I just want to go back in time maybe to understand what inspired you to solve this challenge and how many years it's been and what were the triggers that happened for you to start this startup and that also in medical hardware space.
It's not the one thing which I would say that why I end up doing this today. Being trained as a biotechnologist, when I was doing my PhD in biotechnology, also my interests were more into developing something which can have a real-time value.
Hi, lifters out there. Today we have a guest from India, and she's one of the winners at the Lift 2022 Global Cohort, and she's a very popular person in the cohort. So we have Shivani with us here. Shivani is from India. Shivani, welcome to the Lift podcast.
Thank you, Suraj. Thank you so much.
So Shivani, a lot of the global cohort guys will be knowing your product, but for the broader lifters, if you can talk about your product, your innovation in one sentence, it would be great for all of us to get to know you better.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Suraj. Nice to be here. So, to talk about our product and what we are doing as a company, our company is Inochi Care and our product's name is Inoheal. We are a medical device company based out of India and focusing on wound care, including chronic wounds like diabetic foot ulcers, bed sores, and deep tissue trauma injuries. And putting it very simply for everyone to understand what our product does, we have developed a technology which assists in healing of these wounds because the body's natural capabilities decline due to presence of these wounds and it needs some kind of intervention. Our product, without introducing any chemical formulation, by activating the biophysical stimulations, helps in healing these wounds. For example, if otherwise a diabetic foot ulcer may have taken 6 months to heal, sometimes it takes a year also for people. Using this technology, it can assist in healing at least 2 to 3 times faster, giving the all other medical conditions.
Wow, so non-chemical and a faster way of healing. So it's pretty interesting. So I just want to go back in time maybe to understand what inspired you to solve this challenge and how many years it's been, or and what were the triggers that happened for you to start this startup that also in medical hardware space. So what's the story behind it?
So I think it's not the one thing which I would say that why I end up doing this. But if I look back today, being trained as a biotechnologist, when I was doing my PhD in biotechnology, also my interests were more into developing something which can have a real time value. It was good to work on the research and publish paper, but I was inclined personally to see the real-time impact. So that's why I was involved within the development of some of innovative medical products during my PhD also as side projects. I think that was I can say my first exposure, my first experience. After that, I was a part of biodesign fellowship at AIIMS Delhi, where I had in-depth experience of patients, people, hospitals, doctors, understanding the clinical requirements, understanding the pain points. And that's where I realized that with my teammates, of course, that wounds like diabetic foot ulcers, bed sores is a huge problem. If you will, I don't know, a lot of people won't know, if we will see the numbers are higher than cancer patients. But it's because it doesn't take life directly, it's not given that much of consideration. That's what I felt. However, in the long term, it declines the quality of life very poorly. It can have lots of health as well as economical consequences. So these were some of the trigger points when we saw the people having wounds from the age of 20s to 60s. Everyone was suffering from different kind of wounds, different regions. And we had the chance at that time to go to places like Australia, Japan, and to validate this was not only India's problem, it was a global problem. So that was where we thought, with our skill sets, with our understanding of the problem, with the support system from institutes like AIIMS and IIT Delhi. So we thought it's a important problem area to solve, and that's how we started. And it's been 6 years, my involvement in this space, including my fellowship in our company.
So you spoke about moving from your PhD to commercialization, right? And then to a product, and then going through this journey and all these aspects. So you've been successfully able to go through that entire cycle of research, understanding the customer, being with the customer, leveraging fellowship, leveraging aims, and building a product and then selling it out, and then trying to and then starting to make money right now. So what advice would you give to the scholars that we have in LIF, who have their patents and who are having challenges in commercialization? So what kind of three tips or one advice that you have for to moving your product from a PhD or just research to commercialization?
Uh, from my experience, especially because lots of my bias would be towards the medical technologies and hardware products, some of the things from my experience I can share is, if someone is starting in this space, having patents and having a commercialization strategy are two very different things. So one has to be clear about that, at least have thought about it, what their business model would be. Does it revolve around their patents and IP, or does the initial commercialization model just revolve around having their first product in the market? So because these can be two very, very different things. And especially when you are building a hardware product, your iterations will be much longer, your iterations will be highly expensive, your entry to barrier will be very high because it's a regulated space, being in the medical technologies. To cut down and break down these things very, very detailed way, to understand how you will enter the market, how much timeline would be to build the product, what support system you will need around, I think that's very, very important, which something people miss, because sometimes due to influence of a lot of other things we compare ourselves to the consumer startups, which doesn't work that way from my experience. So it's very important to understand the space and to understand that okay, our R&D space can be one thing, but how do we build a commercial model, how do we build our business model around it? That's very, very important to understand in the beginning itself, otherwise it will be very long process.
So and you spoke about understanding the business model, and again with hardware based products where, as you said, compliances are challenging and the cycle time is longer. So how have you been able to do marketing? So in terms of your marketing, what has been your strategy, your thought process, so how have you been able, or do you have any interesting strategies that you've tried, or example learnings that you had in marketing, the good or the bad, that you want to share with us?
I think some of our experience is, especially when you are a new entrant in the medical space, it's built on the trust. It's you can't just sell your products on the basis of claims, on the basis of, because it's something no one can take risk with. So you need to one of the things which worked with us is involving some of the key opinion leaders, some of the important customers right from the beginning when we were building our product, having their feedback during the development as well, which when they see you building the products over time, iterating on it, building evidence on it, giving the proof of test, giving the proof of safety, that gives them trust on you and your product. That helps you in your initially foot in the door first. Second thing is, you need to understand in the value chain who all you need to convince for buying your product. Sometimes it may be not only the doctor but his support team, for example his nurse's pain point, his or her paramedic staff's pain point. You need to have your right value conveyed to the right stakeholder, because ultimately what we have understood, they take decision as a team, that what's better for their patients, what's better for their hospital. So it's very important that you build that rapport in early on, and sometimes you need to see how you can build the indirect presence also, if not initially as a customer. For example, we did kind of a training and upskilling program for one of the leading corporate hospitals in Delhi. So that gives you a chance to showcase your product, to pitch about your product indirectly in a subtle way to the larger audience. So I think initially very conventional marketing may not work for early stage startups in the medical devices. So it's you build your reputation and trust and find some innovative ways, like conducting these upskilling programs, or kind of building a collaborative thesis projects for their upcoming doctors and nurses. So these kind of ways helped us in our initial initial entry in the door.
Incredible. So what I understand is involving key leaders in the beginning is pretty interesting. That worked out.
Yeah.
And again, the aspect of stakeholder-wise mapping is pretty awesome. That again, a table format could be done, which could be a very focused aspect to understand who are the decision makers, who are the influencers, and what value or small features which are affecting, which could be put into the product. And again, it's very good hack of doing training and upskilling, and then very subtle way of selling the solutions. I think that's very nice. And if you can just a little bit talk about the commercialization journey at the end. So I'm sure that you've been able to commercialize your product. So how is the response, or how is the feedback, or how is that journey been so far? And because it would be a different aspect to control or different aspect to handle. So how is it happening, or what is the story there? As you've been able to successfully commercialize.
Yeah, I think we are right in the middle of it. I think every day is a new learning. It's whole altogether a different kind of thing. It's when you are building a product or testing or validating a product. Sometimes things. At least you can make a roadmap. It will happen. It may take a longer time. It may take a higher cost. But this is a process you will do. But when learning the market and commercialization, I think one of the things which we feel you need a whole shift in the mindset of especially your core team. It's not the same mindset which works when you were building the product and now you are selling the product. Whole shift in your mindset. Okay to take rejections. That people will say it's a wonderful product, but that doesn't mean you are selling your product. So I don't know, is there a single rule which you can say, oh, now this will work, oh, now you are getting this customer? No, it's a everyday new learning. It's a repeat cycle. You have to be on it. Every customer will be a new customer with new mindset. You don't know what will work here. So I think we are on it. We are in the process of learning, but I think it's a very different experience from building the product. And that's where we are trying to, we ourselves also trying to seek a kind of experience sharing from the senior founders, from some of the experts in this field. From maybe just listening their experience sometimes helps us in realizing, okay, what are the mistakes we are making, maybe we can do better here, maybe. And sometimes sharing our things also, they also say, oh, we didn't think this way. But there is no one thing which I can say, okay, this is a formula to sell your product. And initially I think one of the best thing is it has to be a core team led initial selling, because it doesn't work the sale team, because how you can explain your product, especially when you are having your initial customers. But later on what helps is if you have some good customers who are very happy with your product, you start getting references. So that's one thing which I realize is a good thing.
So I think leading your product in the initial part is super important, which helps you then create a structure around for the team. Such a great insight. Now moving on to the second part of the podcast, wherein we have lifters from over 1,000, we've got around 1,000 lifters in over 17 plus countries, and they are all different cultures, different segments, and different products. So what are your expectations from the lift community? Are you looking at collaborating with lifters to co-partner or co-sell solutions, or at least co-research solutions? So what are your thoughts around that in context to collaborating with lifters?
I think it can be really a really great platform. I think it's there. We have that platforms where we can interact with each other, everything. But I think still there is a long way to explore, to use that potential in the best optimum way. Because I know there will be lots of lift fellows from the earlier cohort than ours, and then after that someone at a more advanced stage than us, someone at a comparatively nascent stage than us, where we can specifically if we have industry specific, or for example hardware manufacturing or medical technologies in the space, if we could just talk to each other, just explore each other's experience, and also in their markets how the scenario is. What I think, rather than just saying, we can put it out on the table in what segment we can help each other. Not maybe I can be saying I look forward to this help, but I can say, for example, I can help anyone in understanding Indian regulatory pathway, what they need to sell it in India. We can introduce them to some of our key opinion leaders in the healthcare space in India. That's what I can say I can confidently offer. Similarly, I can put my request there. This is what I am looking forward. But if people also put that what I can help in, I think people can say, sometimes it's a hesitation to ask, people are busy, how much we can ask. But if we have a list what people are okay to offer help, I think that can be a great way to help each other. To I think because I think initial collaborations can be very very important for startups to grow and to thrive. And for example, we are looking forward to understanding the Vietnam and Philippines space, because we realize within our product segment there are great markets. So people who are there in Philippines or in Vietnam, they know how their markets are, what works there, what could be done there. Similarly, if someone wants to sell their product in India, I can tell them what's a channel which can work for them, what's a regulatory certification they need, how we can help them. So these kind of, I think that can be very very useful. And co-selling is always there if the product align and the distribution channel aligns.
Okay, so I think that's a very interesting take on expectation setting of what we can offer, and the ask part of it. So I think we are also, I think, in the coming month launching an activity called Lift Sampark. I think so that's more about a whiteboard for both parties to write what can offer, what is being asked. So that is something it's coming from your. But the interesting part that we spoke about is if it is hashtagged by segments, so it becomes easier for clustering and example approach. So then it becomes segmented aspect. So you can then see which are the people in my segment that I can work with or coordinate.
Yeah.
So I think super interesting. And moving on, Shivani, one of the questions that we ask on the podcast is that if you would have a superpower, what would that superpower be, and why would you like to have that superpower?
I think, I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud, maybe a power to be invisible. Because sometimes I'm very curious how the decisions are being made. I would be like to present in those decision making rooms and understand how the mindset works, how the decisions are taken on. Maybe it's how on buying some product, on building their portfolio, for example, hospitals, on the expanding. I think it's all about choices and decision making. So being there in those rooms where decisions are being made and without being visible, I think that will be a great superpower. As a founder, sometimes maybe in the investors' decision-making room.
So you want to get into the perspective and then understand and become more smarter to influence it. All about stakeholder mapping.
Yeah, I think so. That can be so sometimes you feel, is this the real reason? Is this what should sometimes the things are open to interpret. So I think we can have a better interpretation if we understand how the mindset works.
Okay, so moving on, what are the plans for Inochi Care, or what does the next few months or years that you have thought about lay ahead? So what are the next things that you have thought about, next plans, or any interesting pivots or segments you want to enter? You spoke about Vietnam, Philippines being an interesting market, but do you have something else going on in the mind, or how would you be taking the company there?
So one of the things is definitely we want to build our market presence in India and have more customer base in India. But the other thing which we think is parallelly understanding the global market, having those collaborations there, having those interaction points there, because because especially when we talk about medical devices and the medical technologies, the workflows are slightly different, the procurement behaviors are different, the regulatory spaces are different. So to understand that, for example, when we decided to enter into a Japanese market, the UK market, to have that collaborations and having understanding of that space can be very very helpful. So that's our approach while building our Indian presence, but understanding the buying behavior in the global markets, potential collaborators there, and those are the things on the top of the mind. But as you know, as a startup, you have various things to take care of, building your company, step by step. So lots of things which you don't even think of, but are, you keep up to those things, so that the first and foremost thing is you are there in the game.
Awesome, Shivani. So, Shivani, it's been amazing to have you on the podcast, and you got a lot of very different understanding on how you're trying to influence the segment, and the journey of the hardware medtech startup is again super hard, but you've been able to leverage it by stakeholder mapping and getting through the process very patiently. And kudos to you for commercializing the product and going taking it slow and having a very frugal approach of having focus presence in India, but then having a side that okay, what's happening around the market, and maybe small steps towards Vietnam and Philippines. So that's a very interesting approach, and the idea of also how we can have a dashboard or a space where we can have lifters sharing what they can offer in terms of their time or in terms of their experience, that can help the other lifters to just plug and play and then send requests to get connected, and that can totally help. So it was great to have you on the Lift podcast, and thank you so much for your time, and it was amazing to hear from you as well.
Thank you, Suraj. It was really nice, and I'm always inspired by your energy and your contribution to the LIF in various ways. And like really, I hats off to you for that, for making efforts to make sure things are happening, people are talking, and something is happening in LIF group. So thank you so much for that.